I'm 83 years old. You reach this age, and the world just slows down. You stop worrying about what people think. You start seeing the ledger of your life, the columns labeled done and deferred. And when I look at mine, the regret isn't about the big, flashy mistakes. It's much quieter than that. My biggest, most painful regret is this. I lived my entire life like a practice run. I treated the first 6 decades as preparation for the main event, the real life, the one I'd eventually be ready for. I truly believed there was a starting gun waiting somewhere down the road, and I missed it entirely. The gun fired, and I was still tightening my laces. The practice run feels so safe when you're in it. You tell yourself, I'll start painting when the house is cleaner. I'll take that class when the kids are older. I'll tell him I love him when I'm sure he won't leave. It's a wonderful way to avoid the terrifying risk of failure. If it's just practice, then mistakes don't matter. But eventually the practice run becomes the whole marathon. I was waiting for the perfect moment when I had enough money, enough confidence, enough time, enough wisdom. That state of enough is a mirage, dear ones. It doesn't exist. My children, Alex and Florence, grew up watching me constantly prepare for a future that never arrived. Where did this perfectionism start? Probably my mother, God bless her soul. Everything had to be just so. If the linens weren't pressed just right, we couldn't have company. That conditioning stuck to me like glue. In my 20s, I wanted to open a small bookshop. I spent 3 years writing the perfect business plan. I studied every zoning law. I picked out the exact vintage wallpaper. I even named the shop. But I never signed the lease. I needed to save just $1 more $1,000. I needed to research one more competitor. That shop is now a successful laundromat run by a man who probably didn't spend 3 years agonizing over the font on his sign. It seeped into my relationships, too. I delayed deep conversations, assuming we'd have plenty of time later for the hard stuff. Bertram, my husband, bless his steady soul, always wanted to retire early and buy a small houseboat down in Savannah. I told him we had to wait until the mortgage was completely paid off and the grandkids were out of high school. That day came, yes, but by then his knees were too bad to climb the narrow stairs on a boat, and honestly, my enthusiasm had faded. We had the money, we had the time, but the physical vigor for that dream was gone. I traded the joy of his dream for the safety of zero debt. People talk about big trips they regret not taking. I regret not taking the small ones. We had 2 weeks off every summer for decades. Bertram would suggest driving out west, maybe stopping at those goofy roadside attractions. I always insisted we stay home and focus on home projects, so the house would be perfectly ready for when we really retired. The house is perfect now, pristine even. But the memories are sparse. I prioritized clean grout over dusty adventures. That's a terrible, terrible exchange. I realize now that those messy, imperfect trips were the retirement. They were the living. The worst part is seeing the calendar pages peel back. I remember thinking 60 was ancient. I remember thinking I had limitless time between 40 and 60 to start that novel, or learn Italian, or tell my father everything I truly felt. But that window, those 2 decades that felt eternal, vanished in a blink. Once you hit 70, the physical decline is a shock. Your capacity shrinks. The energy you needed to execute those perfect plans is simply gone. I have a whole shelf of untouched journals that were waiting for my perfect, uninterrupted time to start writing. That time is here now, but my eyesight is failing and my hand shakes. I'm not suggesting carelessness, far from it. Responsibility is crucial. But I mistook preparation for living. Preparation is supposed to lead to action. For me, preparation became the substitute for action. I loved the feeling of having the perfect outline, the perfect budget, the perfectly curated inspiration board. I felt competent, organized, and safe. But life doesn't reward preparation. It rewards implementation. I kept looking for the green light, and I failed to notice that every day was the green light. Every Tuesday morning was the time to start. Every slightly messy kitchen floor was the backdrop for a memory. I remember Alex once asking me why I wouldn't let him use my antique sewing machine. It was a beautiful piece, fully functional, but I was waiting for the right project for it. He wanted to sew a silly pillow for his first girlfriend. I said no. It was too important to mess up on something trivial. I saved that machine for 20 years. It sits gathering dust now. I realized too late that the joy of a silly, imperfect pillow made by a teenager, that was the right project. I protected my possessions and my plans so well that I suffocated the spontaneous joy of the people around me. If you are waiting until you are ready, please hear this from an 83-year-old woman. Ready is a myth. Ready is a fantasy invented by people afraid of messy outcomes. You will never feel ready. You will never have all the information. You will never have zero risk. The people who are living the life you envy aren't smarter or more qualified. They just decided that good enough was enough to start. They embraced the clumsiness of the first attempt. They accepted the humiliation of the imperfect start. I never did. and I wasted so much of my own precious, finite story. Now I sit here, and I look at the beautiful, comfortable life I built, but it feels hollow. It's a beautifully furnished cage. The irony is excruciating. I spent my whole life meticulously polishing the perfect environment to live in, only to find that living requires leaving that environment. It requires dirt, disruption, risk, and failure. I always feared failure in the final performance, so I hid in the dress rehearsal. The biggest failure isn't the imperfect outcome. The biggest failure is the zero outcome, the zero risk, the zero attempt. That's what breaks my heart now, seeing all the zeros in my action column. So what's my advice for you? Stop reorganizing your desk and write the chapter. Stop researching the perfect location and book the cheapest flight you can find for next week. If you have an important conversation to have, don't wait until the atmosphere is perfect. The atmosphere is made perfect by the honesty you bring to it. Stop using tomorrow as a shield against today. Tomorrow is not a guaranteed resource. It is a hope. Today, this messy, slightly inconvenient, imperfect moment you are in right now, this is the actual reality. This is the only chance you get at the real thing. My life wasn't a tragedy, no. It was comfortable, safe, and full of potential. That's the specific pain of my regret. I had everything I needed to create a masterpiece, but I used the supplies to build a safety net instead. Don't let your life be defined by its potential, but by its messy, beautiful, imperfect attempts. Go on now. Stop watching me live and go live your own life. Start right now, exactly where you are. There is no tomorrow. There is only this very moment. Please don't waste your practice run.